talk about feminist film theory and feminist film analysis, because it's often conflated with just being a feminist and having that be part of why you can or cannot enjoy a film. And in fact, it's something totally different. As a feminist, you may dislike a film because there's certain character elements you don't enjoy or certain ways the plot goes that you don't enjoy, and those give you issues. But that is not a legitimate reason to say that a film is not a feminist film, or more accurately, that's not the same as feminist film criticism or feminist film theory. That's a very specific discipline that looks at the film as a whole and how it is written, not merely the individual little messages within it. To give you an example, one thing that I always look for when I look at a film is whether the female characters have presence, voice, and agency. Presence, meaning are they there in the film at all? Indian films almost always have a woman. There's a lot of eye rolling about, oh, you have to have a romance in an Indian film. This is why it's a good thing. If you have to have a romance, it means you have to have a female character. Unlike in many Western style films where there are literally no women on screen at all. 12 Angry Men would be an obvious example. And you can say, well, it's just reflecting society, this is the story it wanted to tell, and so on and so forth. But the basic fact of the matter is there is no female presence in those films at all, which means if you are a woman watching them, you're getting a subconscious message that you do not exist in the world, that you do not have a right to exist in the world. And if you're a man watching them, you get a subconscious message of, this is how the world is. Women are invisible to me, only men matter. So that's why presence is important, and that's why the romance requirement in an Indian movie is good. So even something like Baby, which is essentially very much a process thriller, still has those few moments of home life with the wife. And then they threw a female action hero on top of that, which is also good. But even without her, you would still have that tiny bit of romance and give a woman presence. Voice. This is a little more difficult. Voice doesn't just mean that a woman speaks. It means that a female character expresses her dreams, desires, hopes, goals, all of those things in a way that the audience can hear and understand. It could be something like a fantasy song from the female perspective, which tells you what she wants out of life. It could be something like a speech that she gives to her father or her husband or her brother saying, this is what I want. It could be just showing her at work and being happy, and then we, the audience, realize, oh, this is what fulfills her. Anything that tells the audience something about the character and something about what she needs and wants in life. A great example would be Choti Si Asha from Roja. We're learning about the heroine. It's not just the lyrics of the song saying, oh, my little dreams. We're also seeing visuals. We see that she dreams of graduating from school. We see that she enjoys swimming and playing with children. We learn a lot about the heroine beyond just what she looks like and the fact of her existence. And then there's agency. Agency is about taking that voice, what the heroine wants, desires, dreams of, etc., and turning it into action, letting her make some decisions for herself, change the plot in some way. And this is where it's most difficult, both, it seems like, in Indian society and in Indian films. You may know that your daughter or your sister or the girl next door wants to get a particular degree or dreams of living in a particular city, and this is just something that you know. But how often is she able to actually do that? Or put it another way, how often are those desires taken into account as the most important thing in building her life? How often is it instead, oh, well, her father has decided something else for her, she has to sacrifice because there's a more practical decision, and so on and so forth. And the same is true in films. How often is the heroine, even after expressing her desires, then smothers them because the other male characters have decided something else for her? Or even they have decided to give her her desires, but she's not the one reaching out and taking them. For instance, Dabang. If you look purely at Sonakshi Sinha's character, she tells Salman very clearly that she does not want to marry him while her father is alive. And that's good. It's remarkable that a female lower caste character is allowed to voice her desires in a film. But then Salman and her father, between the two of them, decide what's going to happen to her. She is not part of that bit at all. She is literally just dragged around with no agency of her own. That's what I mean by agency. is after the heroine voices her desires, is it up to her to make them happen, or does someone else make them happen for her? Contrast would be Satya, in which our heroine, well, Satya or Alayapayoti, in both of them, our heroine explicitly says, I want to get married, and then hides from her father, goes to the wedding place, does all of this to make the marriage happen. She has agency, it's her decision, and she's putting it forth. Agency is rare, but it seems like it's less rare in Indian films than in Hollywood films. This may seem strange because if you quickly run through all the Hollywood films with female characters, you'll think, oh, they have a lot of agency. But that's because there aren't that many Hollywood films with good female characters. And again, this gets back to the romance part of it. In a Hollywood film, you can have an action movie with no female characters at all, or if they're there, they just have a few lines here and there in the background. We don't really learn about their individual desires. Going back to Baby, so I loved the Topsy character in Baby, but we do not get to learn anything about what she wants. She never really says, this is why I'm doing this job, this is what I want from life, and so on and so forth. Which is fine, because that's the role of her character. She's just part of the team. But that's what I mean about how you often see female characters in Hollywood movies. They're often just another part of the team. They don't have individual backstories, needs, desires, unique personalities, and so on and so forth. And so when they do, everything follows along. If you have a good female character in a Hollywood film, she almost certainly will have voice and agency as well. So when you go through your examples, you're like, oh, why can't Indian film have a movie like this or a movie like that? Well, it does, but it also has a heck of a lot more movies that fill the first two requirements, that have a female character on screen whose desires we know. And then the desires often go unfulfilled or are fulfilled by somebody else on her behalf, but at least we know them and she's on screen. And that's in almost every single film. The best genre for presence, voice, and agency is the romances. Because in a romance, in order for the plot to work, you have to know what's going on with both sides of the couple. You have to know, well, the hero's feeling this and the heroine's feeling this. So she has to have voice. And she has to have presence, obviously, or else there's no film. And then finally, she has to have agency because that's what gives us our happy ending. When the heroine and the hero get what they want out of life by doing what they need to do. I'm talking about a pure romance here, not, an action movie with a romantic subplot. One of those where the hero is fighting the mobster and what inspires him is falling in love. But no, something like Chandni, Lamhe, Silsila, DDLJ, something, or in the regional industries, Fida, there's a reason that was just a big hit, or anything, Mani Ratnam. If it's about relationships between a man and a woman, then the man and the woman have to have equal voice in the film and have to have equal agency in the film. So the reason I'm giving this whole thing is I don't necessarily want you to agree with me or to use my same three criteria, but I want you to understand what's meant by film criticism. It's not looking for, oh, this one line was bothersome, this one storyline wasn't good. It's looking at the film as a whole on a deep, deep level. Not just looking at what are people actually saying in the dialogue, but looking at the subconscious messages the filmmaker is giving you by how they are representing the world. And that's what I feel has gotten lost somewhere along the way. You can easily pick literally any film in the world and find something problematic in it. And sometimes it's something so problematic that yes, the entire film should be rejected because this one element is central to the film and is so horrible that you just can't accept the whole thing. A movie about a woman falling in love with her rapist, for instance. I don't care how much presence and agency and voice and everything else she has, that would be a bad movie. But most of the time, it seems like lately, people have discovered the ability to jump in and find one element from a film, complain about it, and then throw out the entire film. Without realizing that you have to look at it in context. You have to consider all the other messages that are happening around it. You have to do all of that work before you can look at that one particular element. And that's sort of what I'm calling for here. I want to model a proper way to look at a film or alternative way to look at a film and make you start sort of considering what that might mean for you, how that might change how you view films, and how that might change whether or not you fully agree with people who critique films. And you can disagree with me too, of course. There's a link right below to a post where I go into a lot more detail with a lot more specific examples. Leave me a comment there. I'd love to talk with you. Thanks. Bye.